There's a very American moment that everyone has seen at least once, even if only through movies: a horizon flat as a blade, a blood-red sun hanging low, wind sweeping through brittle sagebrush, and a man in a wide-brimmed hat riding quietly alongside a herd of cattle. Hoofbeats land in a steady rhythm like a heartbeat. A lasso rope taps softly against the saddle, and far off, a lone ranch sits as if forgotten in an ocean of land. That image used to stand for freedom, for a wild life where you didn't need anyone's permission to keep moving forward. But if you drive through the western states today, what you're more likely to meet is endless stretches of barbed wire fence, private property signs, new housing development creeping right up to the edge of pasture land, and old dirt roads blocked by locked gates. Cowboys are still there, but the cowboy of imagination is slowly disappearing, like a silhouette retreating into the dusty haze of history. The paradox is this: the cowboy has never disappeared from popular culture. Stetson hats still show up on fashion runways, rodeos still pack the stands. Country music still spills out of bars from Texas to Montana. People still pose for photos with horses, with lassos, with leather boots and oversized belt buckles. And yet what's fading isn't the outfit or the symbol, it's a way of life. The tempo of labor on the prairie, the long cattle drives, the survival skills tied to land, water, and weather, and a very specific kind of freedom paid for with solitude, risk, and sweat. To understand why the wild cowboy is dissolving into the past, we have to return to the place where he was born. The West was never a romantic stage, it was an economic machine. Cowboys emerged because America needed meat, needed hides, needed a workforce capable of moving thousands of cattle from grazing country to the railroad, and from there to eastern cities. The era of the open range was a time when land was vast, people were few, laws were thin, and fences were rare. Cowboys were borderland workers, laboring in a world where distance was measured in days on horseback, and where a single blizzard could wipe out an entire herd overnight. If you picture the cowboy as a lone hero, you're looking through Hollywood's lens. Historically, cowboys were crews of laborers, many poor, many black men after the Civil War, many Mexican and indigenous workers living hard lives, sleeping outdoors, eating canned food, drinking strong coffee, and working with a discipline as rigid as steel. But one thing did make them symbolic: they worked in spaces so vast that a person could feel like they might vanish without anyone noticing, and could also start life over from nothing. Then the wild began to close. Barbed wire arrived like a small invention that changed an entire civilization. The land was no longer open, it was divided, surveyed, owned, litigated. Railroads and markets professionalized Western agriculture. Brutal winters in the late 19th century reminded everyone that nature doesn't respect men. Cowboys didn't disappear overnight, but the lifestyle of endless roaming was replaced by ranch management, contracts, paperwork, and increasingly tight rules. The 20th century accelerated it. When trucks and jeeps appeared, when fences and gates became normal, the 100-mile cattle drives gradually gave way to road transport. When telephones, then radios, then GPS arrived, the feeling of being lost to the world disappeared too. Cowboys still worked cattle, but they were no longer people of the frontier, they became one link in the food supply chain. And once it becomes a supply chain, the game shifts from individual skill to profit margins, scale, and efficiency. That's the first key point. The classic cowboy lifestyle fades because the West is no longer a frontier, economically or geographically. America's real frontiers today are technology, finance, data, and cities. The West, once an open zone for expansion, has become an attractive place to move to. Americans are wealthier, live longer, and want the Western dream in the form of a house with a mountain view, a small hobby ranch, a weekend escape. The result is soaring land prices. Land is no longer just grazing land. It's an investment asset, real estate, the view, privacy, Status. At those prices, an old-style family ranch struggles to compete. You might meet a ranching family in Wyoming or Colorado whose grandparents have been there for 4 generations. They don't tell cowboy stories in a heroic voice. They tell them tiredly. Property taxes rise, feed costs rise, fuel costs rise, fences need repairs, wells have to be drilled deeper, insurance gets more expensive, and in the end, the son or daughter doesn't want to continue. Not because they're lazy or lost their grit, but because they can see the math. Being a cowboy means working 12 to 14 hours a day, year-round, with huge financial risk, while friends in the city can earn steadier money, have more time, and not gamble their entire future on the weather. And in the West, the weather is becoming a frightening adversary. Drought lasts longer, temperatures rise, wildfire seasons stretch, water grows more contested. The classic cowboy depended on grass and water. Both are becoming less predictable. One dry year can mean not enough forage, thinner cattle, lower sale prices, higher costs. One fire can swallow a ranch in hours. The wild of the past was blizzards and bandits. The wild today is climate volatility and hard to predict disasters, something even generations of experience can't always outmaneuver. As the environment shifts, so do conflicts. The modern West is a stack of overlapping interests: cattle grazing, wildlife conservation, tourism, hunting, energy extraction, and access to public land. Cowboys are tied to the image of freedom, but much real-world ranching depends on public land and grazing permits. As society cares more about conservation, as environmental rules tighten, as debates over wolves, bears, and protected species heat up, cowboys don't just face nature anymore, they face politics and law. A life once defined by outdoor skill is now crowded with forms, regulations, and disputes that often play out in courtrooms, not in the saddle. Then comes the third factor, the industrialization of agriculture and the meat market. In imagination, cowboys raise cattle naturally on grass and sell into a simple chain. In reality, the meat industry is heavily shaped by processing, transportation, and commercial standards. Small ranches get squeezed between rising inputs and unstable outputs. To survive, they either scale up or find niches: organic beef, regenerative grazing, direct-to-consumer sales, ranch tourism. But scaling up means debt, machinery, hired labor, and entering a race where the advantage belongs to the big players. The wandering, romantic cowboy doesn't fit that race. The winners are usually corporate-style operations, where cowboys become employees, not icons. And technology is changing the nature of the work itself. On many ranches, you'll see a TVS instead of horses, drones instead of binoculars, GPS instead of a sense of direction, electronic ear tags instead of hot iron brands. Technology makes ranching safer and more efficient, but it also strips away part of the myth. The moment when a person solves a problem alone with a horse and a rope, out in a place with no cell signal, modern cowboys still need skill. It's still dangerous, it's still exhausting. The story just feels less wild in the way pop culture taught us to imagine it. There's a very ordinary scene in the West now. Early morning, a rancher checks the weather forecast, cattle prices, shipping schedules on a phone, then steps outside to start the day. That doesn't make them any less of a cowboy. It just shows that cowboys now live inside the same system we do: data, markets, and constant connection. A lifestyle once defined by distance from the world is being pulled into the world. And there's another quiet shift: rural populations are aging and labor is scarce. The classic cowboy often started young, learning through community, family, older hands. But as communities thin out, as schools close, as healthcare moves farther away, as young people leave, the line of apprenticeship breaks. Being a cowboy isn't just having a horse and land. It takes social infrastructure, machine shops, veterinarians, neighbors who show up when storms hit, a community that understands and shares risk. As that infrastructure weakens, staying becomes harder. Meanwhile, the cowboy image is being framed as a cultural and political symbol. In some eras, it becomes shorthand for a certain hard masculinity, rugged individualism, don't touch my land, that makes cowboys both celebrated and resented. Some see them as heritage, others see them as a romanticized mask for a violent history of dispossession. As cultural arguments intensify, real cowboy life becomes harder to see plainly as a working class job with very real problems. And that raises a painful question. Are cowboys disappearing because society no longer needs them, or because society only needs them as a story? Many Western towns survive on Wild West tourism, leather shops, shows, museums, rodeos, cowboy-themed hotels. But tourism prefers a consumable image, the cowboy polished, charming, romantic. The real cowboy is dusty, tired, and often an immigrant worker doing backbreaking labor that nobody calls legend. When the symbol is polished, the person becomes blurred. Step into a modern rodeo and you can feel it. Rodeo is sport, entertainment, spectacle. It preserves certain skills and a competitive spirit, but it isn't daily life on the range. It's like a living museum. It keeps the dramatic, the thrilling, the ticket-worthy. The real work: mending fences in freezing wind, vaccinating herds, coping with drought, negotiating permits, calculating debt doesn't make it to the screen. And when what isn't on screen decides the future, the cowboy of myth will always lose. But if we stop at cowboys are disappearing, we miss the most important part. Cowboys aren't only disappearing, they're transforming. In many places, the new cowboy is someone who can ride a horse and run machinery, understand land and understand markets, work outside, and also use social media to sell directly. They use video to tell their ranch story, e-commerce to reach customers, soil science to restore grasslands. They may no longer be wild in the classic sense, but they're trying to keep the core, the relationship between human beings, cattle, and ecosystem. Some ranches shift toward regenerative grazing, treating land like a body that needs healing. They plan rotations, protect water, reseed vegetation, reduce erosion. They collaborate with scientists, conservation groups, even with people they once clashed with. That's a deep change in mindset, from conquering the West to taking care of the West, and it reveals the deeper reason the wild cowboy fades. Society is no longer in an era of frontier conquest. It's in an era of management, balance, and repair. Others open ranch stays, inviting visitors to experience a slice of cowboy life. Some call it commercialization. But it's also survival. When ranching margins aren't enough, people turn the lifestyle itself into a service. The cowboy becomes a storyteller, a guide, part of the experience economy. And once wildness is packaged, it stops being wild. So in the end, why are cowboys and the frontier lifestyle fading in America? Because the conditions that once sustained them, open land, early markets, vast distances, thin law, tight-knit labor communities, are gone. In their place are land prices, industrial scale, technology, climate volatility, overlapping interests, and an urban society that sees the West more as a symbol than a livelihood. Cowboys don't die because there aren't hats or horses. They're forced to change because the structure of the world around them has changed. And the consequences aren't just the loss of a beautiful image. It's the loss of local knowledge, the loss of rural communities, the loss of people who steward grasslands in their own way. When family ranches sell, landscapes change, roads, houses, water, ecosystems. When traditional work declines, part of America's collective memory declines to the memory of living so close to the land that you could hear the wind and guess the rain. There are things cities can't recreate with technology, but there's also another side, harder to say. The cowboy myth has long covered painful truths of Western history: land conflict, violence, forced displacement of indigenous people, and injustices in labor. As the myth fades, there's room for America to see the West more honestly and more fully. Cowboys aren't only white men on horseback. They have been and still are many kinds of people with many kinds of lives. And the disappearance of wildness may open the door to a more mature story, less myth, more human reality. If you stand on a hill in Montana at sunset, you can still see herds moving slowly. You can still hear wind combing through grass. But you'll also see highway lights, power lines, new houses with big windows facing the mountains. The West is still wide, it's just no longer empty for people to project dreams onto. And that may be the final, cold truth. The wild cowboy fades because America no longer needs a dream of empty land. America's new dreams are elsewhere. The West, now, is a place that must be managed, shared, protected, and sometimes purchased. Yet in every ending, something remains. The cowboy may no longer be a drifter roaming without direction. But there are still people who wake before dawn, step outside into knife-edge cold, work cattle, mend fences, guard water, and live with the land like a quiet vow. They don't need the world to call them legends. They just need enough grass, enough rain, and a reason to stay. And if you want to find the real West today, it probably isn't in gunfights or heroic one-liners. It's in the silent persistence of people still trying to hold onto a life that the modern world keeps pulling them away from.